When people first enter the world of Linux, one of the most surprising discoveries is just how many different distributions exist. Beyond the well-known names like Ubuntu, Fedora, Debian, and Arch, there are hundreds of smaller projects, some obscure, some highly specialized, and some intentionally designed for a narrow audience. At first glance, this abundance can seem chaotic. Why would anyone create yet another Linux distribution? And more intriguingly, why would some projects deliberately choose to remain small, specialized, or niche rather than chase mass adoption? The assumption in much of the technology world is that growth equals success. Products are expected to scale, user bases are expected to expand, and popularity is often equated with legitimacy. Yet in the Linux ecosystem, many distributions resist this pressure. They remain intentionally niche, serving focused communities, preserving specific philosophies, or maintaining technical purity rather than seeking mainstream dominance. Understanding why requires looking at culture, governance, technical goals, sustainability, and the very philosophy that underpins free and open-source software. One major reason some Linux distributions stay niche is philosophical clarity. Many projects are built around a specific vision of how computing should work. This vision may involve strict adherence to free software principles, minimalism, security-first design, or a rejection of certain mainstream technologies. Expanding to a broader audience often requires compromise. User-friendly tools, proprietary firmware support, and automated configuration systems can make a distribution more accessible, but they may conflict with a project's founding ideals. For some maintainers, protecting those ideals matters more than growth. Consider distributions that insist on including only free and open-source software, excluding proprietary drivers and firmware even when it means certain hardware will not function out of the box. From a mainstream perspective, this can appear inconvenient or impractical. But for those committed to software freedom as an ethical issue, the inconvenience is a feature rather than a flaw. The distribution becomes a statement, a demonstration that computing can exist without proprietary dependence. Broadening appeal by adding non-free components would dilute the message. Remaining niche allows the project to maintain ideological integrity. Another reason lies in technical focus. Some distributions are designed for highly specific use cases, penetration testing, privacy-focused computing, digital forensics, audio production, lightweight legacy hardware support, or container-based deployment. Expanding beyond these goals could introduce bloat, complexity, and conflicting priorities. A distribution built for cybersecurity professionals, for example, may prioritize pre-installed tools, hardened kernels, and specific configurations that would overwhelm everyday users. By staying niche, it serves its core audience exceptionally well. There is also the matter of maintainability. Large distributions require significant infrastructure: build servers, package maintainers, quality assurance teams, documentation writers, community moderators, and security response teams. Scaling up is not merely a matter of attracting more users. It demands an exponential increase in responsibility. Many niche distributions are maintained by small teams or even single individuals. Expanding too quickly could compromise stability or burn out maintainers. Choosing to remain small can be a deliberate sustainability strategy. In open-source communities, passion often drives development more than profit. Maintainers work on projects because they enjoy solving specific problems or exploring particular technical ideas. Growth introduces expectations, support requests, bug reports, and pressure for timely updates. While some projects thrive under that energy, others prefer a controlled environment where experimentation and craftsmanship are prioritized over popularity. Staying niche helps preserve that atmosphere. Community culture plays a crucial role as well. Larger user bases inevitably bring diversity of expectations. Beginners may demand graphical tools and simplified workflows, while advanced users may resist abstraction and automation. Attempting to satisfy everyone can lead to internal conflicts and design compromises. Some distributions deliberately target technically proficient users who are comfortable with command-line interfaces and manual configuration. This shared baseline knowledge allows documentation to assume familiarity and keeps discussions focused. If the distribution were to pursue mass adoption, it might need to alter its documentation style, support channels, and default configurations, potentially diluting the tight-knit culture that defines it. Another factor is innovation without pressure. In large, mainstream distributions, changes must be carefully evaluated for compatibility, user impact, and enterprise adoption. Niche distributions often have the freedom to experiment aggressively. They may adopt new init systems, file systems, packaging models, or security frameworks long before mainstream adoption. If the experiment fails, the impact is limited to a small user base. This freedom can foster creativity and push the broader ecosystem forward. Remaining niche can thus be a strategic choice to preserve agility. Interestingly, some niche distributions exist as proofs of concept. They explore alternative approaches to system design, such as immutable operating systems, declarative configuration models, or source-based package management. These ideas may eventually influence larger projects, but the original distribution does not necessarily aim to become dominant. Its purpose is to explore, refine, and demonstrate. Popularity is secondary to innovation. There is also the economic reality that not all projects seek commercialization. In the broader tech industry, scaling often ties to monetization, enterprise support contracts, cloud services, or partnerships. Some Linux distributions explicitly reject commercial influence. They may operate without corporate backing, avoiding the compromises that sometimes accompany funding. Staying niche helps maintain independence. A small but dedicated user base can provide donations and contributions without transforming the project into a corporate entity. Security-focused distributions provide another clear example of intentional specialization. A system designed for anonymity or hardened security may include unusual defaults, disabled services, strict firewall rules, mandatory encryption, or routing traffic through anonymizing networks. These defaults can inconvenience casual users who simply want a general-purpose desktop. Expanding to a mainstream audience might require softening those defaults, which would undermine the distribution's core mission. By staying niche, such projects maintain clarity of purpose. The educational aspect also plays a role. Some distributions are intentionally minimal to teach users how Linux works under the hood. They may require manual partitioning, kernel compilation, or configuration from scratch. This approach would intimidate beginners but is invaluable for those seeking deep understanding. If such a distribution were simplified for mass appeal, it would lose its educational power. Its niche status ensures that those who use it are motivated to learn. Fragmentation, often criticized as a weakness of Linux, can also be interpreted as a strength. The existence of niche distributions reflects a culture that values autonomy and experimentation. Unlike proprietary ecosystems where uniformity is enforced from the top down, Linux encourages diversity. Some projects remain small not because they failed to grow, but because growth was never their goal. Their success is measured in impact, not market share. Burnout prevention is another practical consideration. Managing a large user community can be exhausting. Support forums fill with repetitive questions, feature requests multiply, and criticism becomes louder as visibility increases. Smaller communities can be more manageable and collaborative. Maintainers can interact directly with users, receive meaningful feedback, and maintain a sense of connection. This intimacy often disappears in large-scale projects. Remaining niche preserves that closeness. Compatibility constraints also influence growth decisions. A distribution that heavily customizes the Linux kernel or adopts unconventional package management systems may face challenges integrating third-party software. Broad adoption would require building compatibility layers, negotiating with software vendors, and ensuring stable APIs. For some projects, these efforts are beyond their scope or contrary to their goals. They prefer to serve users willing to adapt rather than reshape the distribution for universal compatibility. There is also an identity aspect. A niche distribution often develops a strong brand identity associated with certain values or skills. Using it can signal membership in a particular technical culture. While this should not be conflated with elitism, there is sometimes pride in mastering a complex or specialized system. Broadening the audience could dilute that identity. For projects rooted in strong cultural traditions, preserving identity may matter more than scaling. Moreover, the open-source ecosystem thrives on modularity. Many niche distributions function as laboratories that feed improvements upstream. They may develop patches, scripts, or tools that are later adopted by larger distributions. In this way, staying small does not limit influence. Impact can occur through code contributions rather than user numbers. A small project can shape the direction of Linux as a whole without ever becoming mainstream. The technical debt associated with growth cannot be ignored. As user bases expand, backward compatibility becomes a burden. Decisions made early in a project's life may constrain future development. Large distributions often carry legacy components to avoid breaking user systems. Niche projects can move faster, dropping outdated technologies without worrying about massive disruption. Staying small reduces the weight of historical baggage. Another consideration is governance. Some distributions operate through consensus-based decision-making among small teams. Scaling up might require formal hierarchies, boards, or corporate sponsorship. This shift could alter the project's character. Maintaining a small, trusted contributor base can preserve collaborative dynamics that might otherwise erode under growth pressures. Hardware specialization also explains niche persistence. Certain distributions are optimized for old computers, embedded devices, or specific architectures. Their audience is inherently limited by hardware constraints. Attempting to broaden focus to modern desktops or enterprise servers would stretch resources thin and dilute optimization efforts. By remaining niche, they provide exceptional performance in their targeted domain. It is also important to acknowledge that not all niche distributions choose smallness entirely by preference. Some may aspire to grow but find that their design philosophy naturally limits appeal. However, even in these cases, maintainers may recognize that forced expansion would compromise quality. Instead of chasing trends, they refine what they do best. The cultural roots of Linux encourage this diversity. From its inception, Linux was about empowerment, giving users control over their systems. The ability to fork, modify, and redistribute means that anyone can create a new distribution aligned with their values. Not every project aims to compete with giants. Some exist simply because their creators wanted a system that behaved a certain way. If others find it useful, that is a bonus, not an obligation. There is also a counterintuitive strategic benefit to being niche: resilience. Mainstream distributions attract scrutiny, legal challenges, and commercial competition. They must navigate complex relationships with hardware vendors and corporations. Niche projects often operate under the radar, free from such pressures. Their small size can make them adaptable and less vulnerable to external shocks. Documentation philosophy differs as well. A niche distribution aimed at advanced users may maintain concise technical documentation rather than beginner-friendly tutorials. Expanding to a general audience would require extensive educational materials, translations, and support systems. For small teams, this is a significant undertaking. Remaining niche allows documentation to stay focused and precise. The concept of choice overload also plays a subtle role. While many Linux users appreciate variety, most eventually settle on a distribution that matches their needs. Niche distributions do not necessarily compete for everyone's attention. They exist for those who actively seek them. Their visibility may be low, but their relevance to the right audience is high. Growth for its own sake would not necessarily improve that relevance. In some cases, legal or regional considerations keep distributions niche. Projects developed in specific countries may focus on local language support, regional regulations, or community needs. They may not pursue global expansion because their mission centers on serving a defined population. This regional specialization reinforces the idea that success is contextual. Another dimension is experimentation with governance models. Some distributions explore decentralized development, community voting systems, or unique release cycles. These governance experiments may not scale easily. By remaining small, they can test alternative organizational structures without the complexity of a massive global user base. Release philosophy is another factor. Rolling release distributions that push frequent updates appeal to users who value cutting-edge software. Stable, long-term support distributions prioritize reliability over novelty. Some niche projects adopt extreme versions of these models, either ultra-minimal rolling systems or highly controlled, infrequent releases. Expanding to a broader audience would require balancing these extremes, potentially undermining the distribution's identity. The psychology of ownership and craftsmanship should not be overlooked. When a distribution is small, contributors often feel a deep sense of ownership. They see the direct impact of their work. In massive projects, individual contributions can feel diluted. Remaining niche can preserve that tangible connection between effort and outcome. Furthermore, staying niche can prevent mission drift. As projects grow, external demands can shift priorities. Corporate partnerships might emphasize enterprise features. User polls might push for convenience over purity. A small, focused project can stay aligned with its original mission more easily. It is also worth noting that growth can introduce security risks. A larger user base makes a distribution a more attractive target for attackers. While security through obscurity is not a primary defense strategy, lower visibility can reduce opportunistic attacks. Niche security-focused distributions often rely on careful auditing and minimal attack surfaces rather than widespread deployment. The relationship between niche distributions and mainstream ones is often symbiotic rather than competitive. Niche projects may rely on upstream packages from larger distributions while contributing improvements back. They serve as customization layers rather than standalone ecosystems. Their goal is not to replace mainstream distributions, but to refine them for specific contexts. Finally, the very concept of niche in open source differs from its meaning in commercial markets. A niche distribution can still have thousands or tens of thousands of dedicated users. It can influence developers, inspire forks, and shape discussions about system design. Its impact cannot be measured solely by market share statistics. In a world dominated by platforms striving for billions of users, the existence of intentionally niche Linux distributions is a reminder that not all technological success is defined by scale. Some projects aim for precision rather than expansion, depth rather than breadth, principle rather than popularity. They remain small not because they lack ambition, but because their ambition is different. They seek to build the best possible system for a specific vision, even if that vision appeals to only a fraction of users. This diversity is not a weakness of the Linux ecosystem. It is one of its defining strengths. The freedom to remain niche is itself an expression of the freedom that open source promises. Developers and users' alignment over compromise, specialization over generalization, and community over mass appeal. In doing so, they ensure that Linux remains not just an operating system, but a living laboratory of ideas where even the smallest projects can have a lasting and meaningful impact.